The money you said there is going into the state of the Snowpack, which is a non-profit organization that's hosting these events across the province right now and in Alberta. So we'll get to our prizes in a moment. I'd just like to start with the land acknowledgement. So we'd like to acknowledge that Golden is located on the traditional unceded territory of the Ktunaxa and Snowpack peoples, and the chosen home of the Métis Nation Columbia River Society and other diverse Indigenous peoples. We feel privileged and grateful to be here and to be able to live, recreate, build lives, homes, communities, and relationships on this land. And we are mindful of how we carry ourselves today, so as to demonstrate our intentions to honor this land, water, and all beings who live here. This one I have to read for you word for word as well, liability, etc. The information we present here are our own observations to the best of our abilities. This presentation does not replace actual avalanche training. Sign up for an AST or a CAA course this winter, or maybe next. What you do with the information we present you is your responsibility. Use it responsibly. So, State of the Snowpack is, as I said, a nonprofit BC Public Safety Society passionate about empowering backcountry recreationists with local as it gets snowpack info on a kind of community level information basis, so that we can all hopefully share what we've learned, share our knowledge, and return home safe. State of the Snowpack is delivering this knowledge through 3 community-based avalanche awareness events held across mountain towns in BC and Alberta each winter. And each season, their network of chapters keeps growing. So if you're traveling to ski somewhere else this winter, maybe look up Revelstoke, Nelson, Burnaby, Jasper, Whistler. They've all got chapters. Maybe you can jump into some local knowledge before you get out there. So, mission: decrease backcountry avalanche incidents, casualties, and rescues through the sharing of knowledge. Bridge the gap between the Avalanche Canada forecast, locally specifically applied here, knowledge that we gain as professionals, and just trying to tie the professional and recreational community together. If you're interested in supporting State of the Snowpack at all, you can buy Raffle ticket. You can keep showing up next year. We're going to keep going. You can reach out to me and have a conversation, or check out their website. So provincially or throughout the whole organization, these folks have been sponsoring, and we're pretty stoked about that. You guys don't need to buy a Polaris Raffle up. Locally here, Whitetooth Brewery has been hosting us all season, and we are very grateful. Thanks for coming and enjoying their tasty beverages. Kicking Horse Mountain Resort's been supporting us with snowpack information. Kicking Horse Mountain Safety is the group bringing this to you all season. And Hale will be supplying a ton of our prizes tonight. So prizes. We've got a set of ski poles from Full Farm. We've got a pair of day passes from Compliments Climbing. We've got hoods, toques, gloves, duffel bags, and the grand prize of the evening will be a $600 shopping spree to Hale. So let's get into it here. Tonight, presenting about the Snowpack to you, for you, with you, it will be Mark Herbison, local guide, IFMGA ACMG guide, mountain safety lead in Glacier National Park, CAA level 2, avid skier. Joey Waterston, who is a ski patroller with a kicking horse, AST instructor, and currently taking her CAA level 2 course. That'll be the first half of our presentation, and then after intermission, we'll do like a 15-minute intermission, and then we'll have Hale come up and present to you. He's going to talk about what to do to keep yourself prepared in the backcountry, to take care of yourselves in an emergency, and what it looks like if you have to ask for more help. So I'm going to pass it over to Joey and Mark. Let's give it up for Joey and Mark.
All right, thanks for having us. Thanks for coming. We can't do this without you here. It'd be awkward if it was just us here. You guys been skiing some power lately? Yeah, hell yeah. Yeah. We're getting nods, right on. Current state of the snowpack. We've got some power, we've also got some wind out there, and we have some persistent problems that we're all managing carefully. The first image that you're seeing here is on the back wall of the white wall. This is just showing to us that we have very large cornices that have existed for most of the season. Due to the big snowfall that we had throughout December, we were continuing to see large cornice development, and they remain a hazard, particularly as the weather temperatures start to warm up here. They are more of a problem. Hey, we got power. Even though we have some persistent slab problems that we're dealing with, there's still some safe places to ski out there, and we can still be shredding like this guy. This is an image from a snowmobiling area near town, just from a couple of days ago. On the way in, there was no avalanche across the path, and on the way out, there was a big avalanche across the path. So luckily, those snowmobilers were in the right place at the right time. But this is just showing us that there are some big winds up in the alpine, and maybe they'll be producing some natural avalanches up high. And this is an image of the surface wall before it was buried in our snowpack, up to 30 mils in some areas. So this is mostly what we're dealing with now. This is 2 days ago at King Horse Mountain Resort. That is the world famous Rob Higgs. It was deep. Lucky we had him out there to break some trail. And this is a beautiful image of Mount Tupper. Even though you may be just skiing some conservative lines, you can still enjoy the view. So, there's been some avalanches. This is from T2 North on the ski hill. This was produced from an explosive charge that likely went on that persistent layer. This is in an uncompacted area, so an unskied area of the ski hill. And you can probably speak to this one in one. Roger's Pass.
Yeah, I'll dive into this a little bit later, but this is Mount Abbott, and specifically the observatory path. And we had this path come down size 3.5 after we shot it 3 times with artillery, and it hit the highway. We had to close it.
Oh, wow.
This is also Roger's Pass. So I guess I'll be speaking directly to all the stuff that's going on up in Roger's Pass, and then Joey speaks more locally for Kicking Horse and everything. So this again would be a size 3.5 going into the creek. This is Tupper 2, the Tupper 2 snow shed. So these things are engineered very precisely, as you can see. Like the flank of this avalanche is right along the edge of the snow shed. And it's a very large path, huge start zone, and this thing comes down regularly, size 3.5, size 4.
I think the snow shed was built in the right spot. That's another photo of an avalanche run out. Come on. also cannot, dangerous close. So we've had some recent snowfall on that persistent layer, and now we're seeing some very erratic winds coming from all directions. We're going to give you an immersive experience here. Be better if the volume was louder. Oh. Oh. Two videos of wind kicking across Mount Resort. The first video was the day that I decided to take my mum for the first time up the gondola. She was not impressed. So all of that wind was coming from the southwest, depositing tiny ice pellets into my mum's face. That second video was up at the top of Glory, and the wind was coming from our non-prevailing side, coming from the north, and wrecking the skiing.
So we'll talk about a little bit about the snowpack now, and this is an image of the Fidelity Station snow depth. So I'll explain the graph a little bit here. The red line is the maximum height of snow ever recorded up there. So it's not the maximum season, it's that snow depth for that particular day, taken over the 65-year period we've been recording snow up there. So that's the highest it's ever been. The blue line at the bottom is the minimum. So again, the minimum snow depth from the day for that year, specific day and year. And then the gray line in the middle is just the average over the whole 60 years. And then our line is the kind of baby blue line that shows up there. So we had a really good December. We were quite a bit above average. Never reached any of the high points there, but we're still currently just above average fidelity. We had a crew up there today who dug a plot profile to ground with a 3 meters, 70 centimeters from that. So very deep. We thank the Avalanche techs for doing the work up there.
And this is a graph from Culpity Creek, which is northwest of Golden in the Esplanades. Similar image, you can see outline from this year is the biggest one, and the pink is the median, and then the grey shaded area is the min and max range. So if you look at the graph, you can see in December, that's where we really broke records, which we actually did. And then our snowfall is continuing at a standard rate from there. So maybe we'll be able to break all of the records if we get some big snowfall this week. So we'll just speak to our notable storm and layer formation. So January 26th to February 24th, we are receiving incremental loading on that surface hole layer. So that's our layer of the most concern. And that's because of the size. That's the 20 to 30 mil surface hole that was very reactive. And that is buried now around 70 centimeters in this direct area in the first holes. And as we move west towards Rogers Pass, we might see that up to 127 centimeters deep. So locally, I would say that that layer is prime for triggering around here. It took a while for it to be prime for triggering around here because we didn't see the snowfall amounts that everywhere west of us did. So whilst Rogers Pass and a lot of operations to the west were seeing reactivity on that layer earlier on, it's only really until the last week or so that we've been seeing reactivity again. End of February was the climax events where most of those avalanches that we see from Rogers Pass came down to reach the highway. Around 30 to 90 centimeters on that layer. More recently, as in a couple of days ago, we saw a big warming event. So freezing levels were 1,500 to 2,000 meters, and we started to see some wet avalanches and maybe some isothermal activity in the lower elevations. This chart here is just our cumulative HN24, and it's just helpful to see that cumulative load on the January 26th layer. So that would be around here. You can see that there was a large dry spell in January, you guys probably all remember that. And that's when that surface floor started to grow. Beyond that, we saw some incremental loading. So around this point, that was not enough snow for us to see any reactivity. And it wasn't until probably early in February that there was enough snow on that layer around here for us to be seeing any avalanches.
So I'll break down the season's notable layers here. I think we saw our first snowfall sometime in October, and I sometimes get excited for this and think, yes, I can put my mountain bike away, pull on my skis, scrape it down to Glacier, hit some rocks and stuff like that, but switch up the season. But it's also in the back of my mind as an avalanche forecaster dealing with problems in the spring. It gives me fear, I guess. So these crusts, snow falls, it warms up, it rains, snow falls again, it warms up, forms a crust in the alpine. And these are problems that we're going to have to deal with initially in the beginning of the season, and then they'll likely show their head again later in the season when the snowpack goes isothermal. So we have a November crust that's near the bottom of the snowpack, a December crust also near the bottom. It depends on the area. Sometimes they're squished down right next to each other. And these layers, they'll decompose and they'll turn into facets or depth ore, and they're a very weak snow crystal. And the season snowpack often bridges those layers until it warms up in the spring. And once it warms up enough, the snowpack turns isothermal, so meaning the snowpack is all one temperature around 0, and then the whole snowpack removes. So I'm bringing up the crust specifically at the bottom of the snowpack as we enter spring, and things are going to start warming up, and it's going to start to be something to think about. Both in the Brussels and around Rogers Pass, we have a very strong mid-pack. So well settled, we have lots of rounds, everything's nice and tight and solidified. And then on top of that, there's the January 26th surface floor milk freeze crust facet combination that we've been seeing all these large avalanches on recently. And then the February 9th surface floor layer as well. In some areas, these layers are within 10 to 20 centimeters of each other as the snow is settled over the season. So we may be lumping them together, the forecasters for the area may be lumping them together and just be calling it persistent slab and including both of those layers in that column. And then more recently, another surface floor layer, quite small, but still prevalent, and it was likely one of the active layers in the most recent storm cycle that we had. So the storm slab would have formed on top of the March 3rd surface floor layer. And likely what we saw was the storm layer failing and then stepping down into these deeper layers.
Okay, this is a profile from the Dogtooth study plot, which we do all of our profiles on. It's on flat ground, so there's no specific aspect. Mostly to note is the location of the January 26th layer, which is 70 centimeters down. And then seeing that the rest of the mid-pack here is well consolidated, there's no changes in resistance. These are all the rounds that you see. And it's not until you get way down the bottom here that would be our December crust. We haven't seen that to be a problem at this point, but later in the season, in the springtime, when those temperatures rise, we could see this layer start to wake up again.
So this is a snow profile done at the Fidelity Station. It's a couple of weeks old, but I chose this one just to emphasize what Joey just mentioned, that this is November crust near the bottom of the snowpack. It's quite weak, and we have this large consolidated mass on top of it. And this is the December crust as well, much smaller than the November. November's quite short, thick. November 19th, which happens to be my birthday. So it was memorable for me. Yeah, and then up here we have the January 26th surface order and the Feb 9th. And these layers have been giving us sudden planar results. Everyone's familiar with the different characteristics of stability tests and profiles? Yes? No. Yeah, the crew's up there today and they dug another plot profile like this. They didn't have time to plot it and I couldn't get it up here. So we're going to go over the danger ratings in the Brussels. So this forecast was taken from yesterday, so it's not up to date. So this was today's forecast. They're calling it considerable, moderate. And I just wanted to put this slide up there to talk about what considerable and moderate actually mean. I'm sure everyone's kind of familiar with it, but I give myself this reminder all the time. Even as a forecaster, when I'm recreating. So considerable, dangerous avalanche conditions, careful snowpack evaluation, cautious route finding, and conservative decision making. Natural avalanches are possible, and human-triggered avalanches are likely. So I was patrolling the highway today. We did an overnight shoot 2 nights ago. We brought down many avalanches, size 2.5 to 3.5, a couple size 4s. And we had the hazard rating as high during that time, but it's since been dropped down to considerable. So natural avalanches still possible, human-triggered avalanches. And then looking at moderate, natural avalanches unlikely, and human-triggered avalanches possible. So we've dropped into that period where you're going to see a lot of natural avalanche activity, but if you get into, start pushing into bigger terrain, steeper terrain, alpine terrain, you're going to start hitting these areas that may have not failed during the storm cycle previously. So looking at tomorrow's forecast and Wednesday, considerable moderate through the alpine tree line and below tree line. So less likely to trigger avalanches by yourself, and unlikely to see many natural avalanches in the next couple of days. The first problem is the persistent slab. We have rated all elevations, all aspects possible to size 3, 3.5. So it's fairly large avalanches. It's kind of the low probability, high consequence type situation that we all just love being in. So surface or crust is at the perfect depth for human triggering. Greatest concern is on north and east facing slopes, a tree line and below. This avalanche was taken, this photo was taken at the Fidelity Station going down into Chutes Lake. So it's right around that tree line elevation, around 1,900 meters, 2,000 meters. That slab's about 157 meters deep, naturally triggered. And we would typically ski through that terrain, typically no questions asked, down the lake. It's through trees. But if you imagine if you got caught in an avalanche in that terrain, getting right through the trees, ping-ponging ball off them, is pretty gnarly. And so we had surface or 30 to 40 mils form up in that area. And typically surface order, it can linger for like 3 to 4 weeks, and then it might lay down and get squished and start decomposing. The tree dug the profile up there today, and it's still standing straight, 30 mils thick. So it's still well preserved and still very sensitive. So in those areas that haven't been triggered, you're going to get something like this. And go for that. Second problem being wind slab. So we have it at the alpine and tree line on the west, north, through east aspects. Possible to likely smaller on the size scale, so size 1 to size 2. So fresh and reactive wind slabs may continue to form, small wind slabs may step down to deeper weak layers. So when I'm in the Alpine, I often don't think about aspect with wind slabs. I just think they're everywhere in the Alpine. And I put this photo up, one, I probably take an image or take a photo of this every time that I'm up there on that terrain. It's beautiful. But that terrain has multiple aspects on it. So it's south-facing terrain, but there's tilting to the east, it tilts to the west, and you can get all sorts of different Venturi effects in there, the wind whipping around, so there's probably lots of pockets of wind slab in that area. Just always be on the lookout when you're in the Alpine. If you notice density change as your ski touring up or being packed into the terrain, just take note of that in your hollow or hollow sample or notice any weaknesses. So we'll get into terrain and travel advice. This photo was taken on the east side of the repeater 2 weeks ago, skiing down through the trees after skiing the path itself, which we ran and we didn't have any signs of instability through the actual path itself. But as we walked up through the tree line ETL, we were getting whoops and settlements and shooting cracks, and it was very obvious that the surface was reaching its threshold. So this was 2 weeks ago, so didn't quite reach it yet, but it was showing us that there was this weak layer underneath there. So, watch for signs of instabilities like woofing, hollow sounds, shooting cracks, recent avalanches. Be aware of the potential for remote triggering and large avalanches due to buried surface soil. So, I think this was triggered by a sled moving along the creek, or is it? Yeah. So surface soil often forms, along creek beds or in open areas and trees. So this is something we would be cautious about. I was skiing in the Esplanades sled access feature last week. Started off a tree line, trees and creeks head together, felt pretty comfortable and confident moving through that terrain, and I'd skied through it a couple times already through the season, so I had an idea where that sort of layer was. Wasn't super familiar with the line that I was skiing, and I ended up opening up into this very large open area within the tree line. I was like, holy fuck me, I do not feel comfortable here right now. So I cut off to the side, called my buddy on the radio just to make calm. We'd split off at that point. Skied down a little bit further, and then ran into a natural size 2.5 that had released about 100 meters below me previously. But my spidey senses were going off through that tree, knowing that that surface area there was down 50 centimeters or so. And watch for newly formed and reactive wind slab as it transition into wind affected terrain. So I haven't been in the Alpine much this season, just due to, I'm going after good ski conditions, which have been in the trees. Mainly, there's been really good days in the Alpine where it snowed and the wind's been light. But recently, the wind has been crazy strong, multi-directional gusts in it. And it's something to think about when you're transitioning out of that terrain into wind affected terrain. So Avalanche Canada's avalanche summary for today, or yesterday's. Persistent slab avalanche has been reported over the past week from natural ladder and explosive triggers up to size 3. Avalanches have primarily been at tree line and below on all but south-facing slopes. Quite reactive tree line and below. That's not to say you're not going to run into avalanches at all. Sorry for this slide. I don't think I'm going to read this. It's a lot. But the profile I showed you earlier, this is what it looks like to ground. So it's probably around 3 meters. And we'll dig profiles that are over 4 meters deep in Rogers Pass. So I was an avalanche tech for years. My back hurt for years with the amount of snow that I shoveled out of there. I don't know how many hundreds of tons I've moved in snow over the years. But the takeaway from this is we have new snow on top of a crust up to about 1,800 meters, 1,800, 2,000 meters. Ideally, the warm temps and all the rain, like we received a ton of rain up at Rogers Pass. So we had 70 mils in this last storm a couple days ago. Freezing levels up to 2,000 meters. And it saturated the upper part of the snowpack like 30 centimeters deep. So that's a huge amount of additional load to the snowpack and stressing the snowpack. It has since gotten quite cold and frozen. I think Joey can attest to the ski quality down low below tree line is no good. And they also give us a weather summary. So looking at this, and I'll show you the next slide, you know, as watch is talking to me. Temperatures dropped off significantly, so forecast of minus 13 for today, and wind gusts 15 to 40K. In the next slide here, I just pulled this up from the advanced weather data from the Kicking Horse advanced weather site, and verified the forecast was quite right. It was minus 15 up there today, with gusts up to 40K an hour. But looking at this forecast, the temps are going to stay cold for a couple of days. It's minus 16 tomorrow. But looking at Wednesday, they're saying gusts up to 110 kilometers an hour with a little bit of snow. Thankfully, the forecast has changed since last night. So I took this image, and the wind values have dropped below 100, like gusting up to 70, which is still really strong. And there's less snow, but it's prolonged over a couple days. So hopefully we'll, good tree line and below skiing, bury that crust, and bring back some decent skiing. And I check this like daily, if not multiple times a day, to get wind values, to see what's going on up there, to kind of track that, building that my mental map of what's going on. So I'll check this site, I'll check other wind sites in Rogers Pass and the Rocky, and I don't know, kind of geek out. I don't have any friends that just look at what the weather says. Here's another one. This is the advanced weather off the Avalanche Canada site, showing that Wednesday storm rolling in, which is dissipated, as I said. So we're like somewhere here. The green is good. That's precip. So this moving in westerly flow off the Pacific. Washington's going to get hammered. We'll get a little bit, but not very much. If you are a weather nerd, if it's a westerly flow like this, and what the last storm is, the snow forecast for Rogers Pass, specifically if you look at the NAM, it'll say like 30 mils. But if it's a directly westerly flow, it's going to be double that. Doesn't fail every time. Little tidbit there. And locally for around Kicking Horse, this season the NAM, these are all different weather models. The NAM's been off, and it's usually pretty good for wind. But the precip values have been quite off locally around Golden. The icon medium range has been like bang on if you're looking for precip values. So if you use the spot weather or something like that, icon for Golden, NAM or the Gem regional for Rogers Pass have been quite active this year. And they always give a confidence rating at the bottom of the forecast. And I've written the forecast for a bunch of years, and it's a handy tool to like describe how confident you are and what you're trying to get across. But I kind of found this funny. We're confident there are persistent slabs in the snowpack, but uncertain about the likelihood how likely they are to trigger. We are uncertain due to the variability of the wind effect on the snowpack, but certain wind slabs exist somewhere. So it's like, great. Okay. reading it on my phone like, what? So we'll get into a couple case studies, one around kicking horse, and then I'll dive a little bit deeper into a large natural avalanche event we had at Rogers Pass, and a bunch of control images as well.
Okay, we've just got a few notable avalanche events that have happened within the past week or so at Kicking Horse. The image that you're looking at is on the east side of the T1 peak. This is permanently closed to skiers, but does affect terrain below it. So during a big storm cycle, we need to control this to make sure members of the public do not get buried. So we had a big storm last week. During that storm, so we could open up the double-header terminated terrain, we shot the Avalanche, which is our gun. It's basically a glorified potato gun that fires rounds, and ideally they hit that snowfield and produce avalanches. So we fired the gun. Most of those gun shots produced size 1.5 to 2 avalanches. We deemed the terrain safe to open beneath it and allowed people to ski Terminator double-header left-right. The following day, we got some visibility, so we were able to see the hang fire from those shots. So there was a lot of snow still holding above where we were able to shoot that gun. On top of that, there had been more snow that had fallen during that storm. So a team went up to the ridgetop, threw some hand charges on that slope, and basically triggered full feature on the east wall. A size 3 at Kicking Horse Mountain Resort is a really big avalanche for us. We are not like Rogers Pass, we do not have huge size 4 avalanches ever. So size 3 is a big deal for us. So the run out of this avalanche ran down to the Terminator run, covered moguls and previously ski terrain. This likely failed on that persistent layer, January 26. We also have a pretty notable result on the T2 North Face. This was also a hand charge. That was the image that was shown earlier, size 2, failing on that persistent slab. This is not skied or compacted terrain, but does affect terrain beneath it. In my last work shift, we had a lot of wind coming from all directions, from our prevailing side, the southwest, and also from the north, and a lot of low elevation wind as well. So generally, we just see the wind coming over the ridgetop, building cornices and wind slab in the immediate lead. But during this last wind event, we were seeing a lot of cross-loading and low elevation wind coming into those bowls. So caution for anyone out there skiing, these wind slabs are not just existing in the typical lee areas in the Alpine, but also existing in lower elevation places where you maybe are not expecting them.
All right, so I'll talk about the notable avalanche events we had at Rogers Pass last week. And it happened during my 4-day shift up there, so I came out of after the 4 days, just wrecked with all the things that have been going on. We shot 3 times in 4 days, fired 181 rounds, which is a lot for 3 shoots in a 4-day period. So February 26th, so I'm just going to read off this for a second here. February 26th, Avalanche Control produced many size 3s and 3.5s with several size 4s. So in that first round of control, we fired 100 shots. February 27th, numerous avalanche paths run into their historical runouts in the assault and economic drainages, with many backcountry users having very close falls in those drainages. And then later that evening, a natural size 3.5 put debris onto the highway, which was open during that time period. February 28th, more avalanche control resulted in Traditional avalanches, size 2 to 3.5, fired 41 rounds through the overnight period after that natural avalanche hit the road. And then March 1st, we wanted to do a cleanup shoot just to pick up any additional pockets that may still be lingering up there. So we're going after all the obscure targets in the start zones. So another round of patrol, many size 2s up to 3.5, again, another 40 rounds. And the image here, we'll dive into this a little bit more, but it's in the Connaught drainage. And that's the Grizzly slide path on the west side. So if this person is skiing out of the drainage. And the debris pile covered the skin track, obviously. And it's 6 meters deep there. And that covered the whole fan. Hit the creek, went up the other side, buried the summit. Huge event. And that was only about a third of the bowl up above. So there's still 2/3 of the snow left up there, and it produced a size 4. So just imagine what that could actually be. I got some interesting graphs I'll try to explain here. So we have a detection network through Rogers Pass. We have 16 arrays that have like geophones and infrared and radar and infrasound and all these interesting terms, but they have 10 to 15 sensors on each one, and they pick up avalanches for us, and they're tuned to pick up avalanches. So they won't pick up an airplane flying through or a semi hitting the ditch or something like that. And so we largely use this for our safety on the highway. So when we're doing patrol, we're shooting at night a lot of the time. We're going to shoot whenever the storm is at its peak. And sorry, my watch is talking to me. So I guess the upper image, all the blue marks on the upper image are avalanche detections. The red marks are artillery triggered avalanches. The green dots are all the arrays that are through the park. And then the lower part of the image there, you can see on the graph, those are avalanches. So the more vertical lines we have, the more avalanches that are coming down. So we did control and had a large natural avalanche cycle on the 26th. The little, explosion is when we do control. Lightning bolt is when we had the large natural avalanche event in the surrounding valleys. And then the little cloud there is the observatory hitting the highway. Questions about that? Yep. So we use a C3 artillery. So it's howitzer round, yay big, quick charge 7. So there's a lot of oomph behind the shot. It's going to go fast and direct there. And it's a 2 kilogram charge. So this was on the afternoon of February 26th. It's the Tupper 2 avalanche path. And hopefully that is. So that's a size 3.5. I'll fill it again. It's impressive. Moving with a ton of speed. Thank you, Smoochhead. And that's the leftover debris pile from that avalanche. Pretty significant. So this image is just showing the precip that we received up at the Fidelity station. So we got 70 mils over that storm period. The thing about the storm last week was that it was stretched out over multiple days, and we ended up getting more snow than they forecasted because it was a westerly flow, and there was a lot of convective activity after the main part of the storm. So we'll typically try to shoot at the peak of the storm, which we didn't necessarily do to start this off, just because we had crazy wind values. So we had gusts up to 140k an hour. And for a period, you know, it was averaging for a period for like half a day or 2 days, I don't know, it was a long time. It was averaging 60k an hour and gusting up to 90. And that was a period that we had like sustained wind values for 24 hours, and then we had all these large natural avalanches come down in the adjacent valleys of the canal and Sultan. And we have a winter permit system up at Rogers Pass, so we keep areas closed and then open areas every day for recreational use. So during those closed times, this is the Connaught Valley. These are the only two areas of access, so the Connaught drainage and the Sultan. So you got Cheops Mountain on the left, Grizzly on the right, Ursa Minor, the big purple slug at the top, so that's 8812 hole. These are showing all the large, like size 3.5 to 4 avalanches that came down during the day on the 28th. This area is open, it's always open to backcountry users. And there's probably 30 to 40 people in the valley that day. And then we start getting reports of these avalanches coming down. And I was just like sick to my stomach waiting to have to go do a response in this terrain. So in the morning, 30 to 40 people walk up the valley. And I guess I'll pre-note this with, like I walked up this terrain lots in high hazard. Like those people did that day, so I'm not like preaching or saying like, oh, people do this, those people have done. I've done it myself many times. The one thing that was different on that particular day was the wind values. You know, sustained 60k gusts and 140 is like, my God, that's going to be horrendous out there. 30 to 40 people up the valley. Thankfully, no one was crossing the Grizzly Slide path when I went size 4. Very significant. So that's the typical skid track through the valley. It's people think of Rogers Pass and you're like, oh, I'm going to go to Blue Path and ski an easy day. We do not have any simple backcountry terrain in Rogers Pass. None. Every valley is significantly threatened by multiple overlapping large kid-ass avalanche paths. We were up there last week just doing we were flying our drone, just doing a survey of the avalanche debris, and it's just like carnage the whole way up the valley with avalanche debris. It's terrifying. Do I be scared yet? So that's on the Grizzly Slide Path fan, looking towards Hourglass, which would be at the top of the photo. You can see that it ran down, filled the creek, and then went up the other side. And that's the western edge of the slide path. Above this, to the left, or the view there, I took out a swath of trees coming down, snapped them all off. This is the Sultan drainage. Mountain Ramparts on the left, Mount Afton, kind of big ridge feature on the right. This is when we first initially heard of all the natural avalanche activity happening in the backcountry. So the green line is the typical spin track through there. Walk through there lots. We got a call from a group of people that were staying at the Wheeler Hut. They're avalanche professionals. They're just out there skiing, having a good time. And as they're walking up the valley, they had the Rampart path slide, size 3.5, possibly 4, right in front of them. Into the creek, across the flats, up the other side into the trees, which stopped them in their tracks. Obviously, they're terrifying. And so they were in that location, in a safe spot in the trees between the Rampart paths and the Abbott paths. And so like, okay, I think thinking our day's done. We kind of made a mistake in this valley for the day, high hazard, high wind, tons of snow. They turned around and then watched 2 Avalanches come down right in front of him. So a couple minutes on either side would have taken out the whole group, size 3.5 Avalanche. So we get a call from this group to tell us what's going on, and we're like, fuck. We have, on their way out, they didn't do a transceiver search of the debris. They were staying at the hut. They were the only group. They thought they were the only group in the valley. And we're like, oh, there's still a parking lot and people coming in. Anyways, we have a discussion within the team. We're not going to put ourselves at risk given the avalanche conditions for the day. We're going to have to wait it out until the end of the day, check parking lots, make sure all the vehicles are gone. We ended up calling the ACC, getting license plates for the vehicles that are staying at the hut, so we can, cross-reference those, make sure there's no one in the backcountry. And then we start getting the calls about the Connaught avalanches and everything. So it's like, our whole cruise is kind of on edge. After doing avalanche control twice already, and then waiting around for this. Thankfully, as the day progressed, we had other groups in the valley skiing out. So there was a group at the Asulkan hut on their way out. They actually watched all of that happen as well. They were coming through the mousetrap. They watched Rampart come down, they watched Hale come down. Gives me shits. And so on their way out, they did a transceiver check for us. Thankfully, there was no one involved. And then, at the end of the day, we got a call about Connaught, and all the debris had been searched as well on the way out. And thankfully, all the vehicles that weren't staying at the huts were gone by the end of the day. So we had, thank goodness. So we're looking, the left image is looking out the valley towards the highway. The skin track was right through there. And then the right image, we're looking up towards Allet. And the skin track is obliterated. And the next video, we got permission, so we got these photos from the group that was witnessed all of this happen. He said that I could use the photos in the next video I'm going to show. Didn't want his name used in the presentation, but this is a video of them watching the Abbott's paths come down in front of them. You don't see a whole lot. You'll get the So a couple minutes either way, there would have been smoke, which is terrifying. And this is an image of the north shoulder of Mount Abbott. And so, like I said earlier, we ended up putting 3 rounds of artillery into the space less than 12 hours before it went size 3.5 and hit the highway. So it just goes to show you like spatial variability, timing, temperature, wind loading. There's so much going on. So we did our best to bring this thing down. Like we had a conversation at the end of the day. We shot 100 rounds into the mountains. Our typical shoots are around 60 rounds typical. And we put in 100 on that shoot. So we felt pretty good with what we saw come down. There was definitely a couple of outliers. Observatory being one of them, and a couple other paths that we recently just bombarded with heli bombing and more artillery. But yeah, we try our best to keep the highway safe and keep it open as long as possible. So when you guys are getting frustrated in Golden and Revelstoke, you can blame me. For this particular storm, it was stretched out over like multiple days, and we weren't seeing that intense precip value rates. Like we'll look at mils per hour, and so that storm went on for 2.5 to 3 days with average hourly rates of like 1 to 1.5 mils an hour. if we see rates up to like 3 mils an hour, 4 mils an hour, over like an hour to 5 hours, that's when it's going to hit extreme. Because it was because it was a prolonged storm and gradual incremental loading, it didn't really, in hindsight, maybe it should have been extreme. But it was definitely high. And extreme is, we've used it at least once this season before, and it always like catches your eye. Oh, geez, don't show us on that. Mosquito. Stay on sleeping. I don't know if that. Yeah, I don't know, just after the fact, hindsight is magical, right? Everyone thinks they can nail the forecast in hindsight, or like, what am I trying to say? It's difficult. And yeah, during those events, during those climax events, it may have been extreme, but like we weren't seeing activity elsewhere. Like we're working along the highway, and a lot of those paths are artificially controlled, so we may not have like direct insight to what's going on in the backcountry all the time. But like for me, if it's rated as high, like I'm not going out into the backcountry looking to ski objectives or like getting into the ski avalanche or anything. I'm obviously avoiding it, avoiding overhead avalanche.
I think the second half of that question is actually the important part, the question about the spa. So in Canada, we have this thing called special avalanche warnings, and our avalanche forecasts are all hazard-based, right? So we don't take into any account the risk. But the spa is risk-based. So you'll see a spa issued on a moderate or considerable day on a long weekend. And the risk is high, but the hazard's not. Because when the hazard's high, it kind of speaks for itself. So that's when the spa tries to get that information. Yeah, but the hazard is high. The red light's already flashing. It's considerable that weekend, there might have been a spa.
So that just shows the crown of the observatory slide path. So there's a big basin up there, it's like a dish. So fill that dish and then fire it over the cliffs into this very small, and you won't see the path itself, but it fires over this thing. So it's almost like a lip, and then into a small gully feature, and then it's direct action right down the highway. And the gully feature is like wider from me to the wall. So the force and energy that's being created coming down through that thing, all of that debris coming down is pretty wild. Any other questions about any of that?
Okay, that's why I don't ski in Rogers Pass. Oof. Does anyone have any stories they would like to share? Any stories of hardship or avalanche near misses, things that stood out for them in the last couple of weeks? No hardship. No avalanches, alright? We'll just speak to Avalanche Canada and the reporting. Even if you don't have something notable or don't think you have something notable, please share your information, whether it was just to say that you had a really great day skiing, or if you noticed some natural avalanches out there, even if you did not trigger them yourself, please share them. This really helps people like Mark produce forecasts and try and get that forecast right. Often with the Avalanche Canada forecast, they are forecasting for a really large area, so it's very difficult to come up with an accurate forecast for that entire area. So that's why it's so helpful for you guys to share what you found out there, because it could be in a far-reaching corner of that forecast area, and that can tell the story a little better. If you see something, say something, please. So tonight's takeaways, where do we start? Roger's class, very scary. But I think maybe it's all Avalanche now. It's good to go. So the persistent slab problem is becoming less sensitive to human triggering. So now that we're out of that period of warming where those climax events were happening, the sensitivity has lessened. So given that the problem is now lower in the snowpack, about 70 to 120 centimeters down, this can make the warning signs either non-existent or just very hard to see. So you're not going to be seeing those shooting cracks necessarily coming off your skis when the problem is 70 centimeters down. Okay, so they can really take you by surprise still, and particularly in those areas that haven't avalanche yet, that problem is still lurking. And important to note that the size of that avalanche will be much larger. So these are those low probability, high consequence events. Important to speak to the strong winds that are out there. So I think that natural avalanche that came down whilst the crew was snowmobiling just near town, that was initiated by a wind up high. So like Mark said, the high wind values in the Alpine are something to really consider, and those natural avalanches can happen because of the wind. Another thing to note with that wind is that it's producing wind slabs in the lower elevation areas as well. So there is more snow and there is more wind on the way. Forecast amounts are uncertain at this time, but likely some of either of those two things. We are moving into spring right now. That means that it's a good idea to start early and finish early. So yeah, make sure you set your alarm clock for 6 a.m. Get out there and try and wind up those days by around 3 o'clock. And keep those crusts in mind as well. So whilst they haven't been a problem during the season, they will start to wake up with those warming temperatures as well. Anything to add? Have you guys taken something away from this tonight? Good.
Not widely available to the public. In the Rogers Pass or Glacier National Park bulletin will often list the large events that have came down from control, but nothing open to the general public. Well, I guess snow starts to move at anything above 25 kilometers an hour, so like the moderate range. It'll start being transported and building wind slab. I can expect additional transport in like this 40-kilometer-hour range, building significant wind slab. I think with wind values that are over 100k an hour, probably not building wind slab because that snow ends up in Alberta. So we actually saw that last week with the 120, 140 kilometer gusts in the past on Mount McDonald that typically is shed wind slab avalanches all day, every day. We weren't seeing any results in there. And then other paths on Tupper were loading quicker and pumping up big avalanches. again, the, 30 to 40K range can be significantly. It probably didn't go far enough into the snowpack to actually get to those layers, but it's going to form a really thick bridge over top. So it's no guarantee, don't take this to be truth or anything, but that crust is going to bridge some of that persistent nuclear for now, up to the 1,800 meter range-ish. So I'll be less concerned, but it's still possible to trigger that. Potentially, yeah. It's kind of tricky with the crust. It could limit the amount of propagation that it has, depending on how thick the crust is. It all depends. I hate saying that, but it depends. You want to talk about this or should I? The isothermal snowpack and how it actually happens?
How the isothermal snowpack happens. So that could be from a rain event. Isothermal means that the snowpack has become water soaked throughout. So whether that be from a spring warmer or whether it's from a big rain event. So I would say at the ski hill at the moment, we would be seeing isothermal properties from 1500 and below. We had some serious rain up to 1500. So I guess maybe 1200 and below, you would be starting to see some isothermal properties. So yeah. I guess the isothermal nature wouldn't be the reason that those layers wake up. I would say that it would be the just warming temperatures and maybe some facet development on those crusts reaching those layers. Yours?
Yeah, we'll also see isothermal conditions develop when we've had above freezing levels for a prolonged period of time. It doesn't necessarily have to do with a rain event or anything saturating the snowpack. So getting into the spring, we've seen warm temperatures. If we have above freezing levels for, it takes a couple days for the snowpack to to go isothermal, to turn on one temperature. And so to go back to those crusts, you get say 2.5 meters snowpack all at 0 degrees or -0, but could be more 6 degrees sometimes. And then it had it sitting on that crust, that facet layer that's breaking down. And you just have that weight of the snow on top of a super weak layer. And the whole thing would just release. And it might take, a little bit of additional load. It might fail naturally. It might take a skier to move through it. I can explain that very well. Yeah. And as we get into spring, we're saying start early and early. Starting early in the spring for me is 2 a.m. Yeah, not 6, but different objectives, I'm sure. But watch those freezing levels. It'll become the forecasters will be very vocal about freezing levels and how high they're going and overnight recovery, crust recovery. So, yeah, get out early and early. Skiing through isothermal snow is horrendous. Skiing schmuck up to your knee. And it's hard to ski. It depends. it does get factored in for sure. Yep. He was asking about, he was asking about the high hazard and wind gets factored into the forecast. And other comment was, it wasn't any higher than high because of the prolonged precip and no big precip spike. And he's asking about does the wind get factored into the forecast. And yes, it does, for sure. But it takes like a special event or like a special trigger to actually post it as extreme. Like there are, maybe it did reach extreme that day. Maybe it was consistently high. Maybe it fluctuated through the values, but forecasters just trying to give the general trend for the area.
It's not that I'm giving you guys the hook. Thank you. Can we get a big round of applause, please? Massive thanks to these guys. It's not easy to sit here and present and be scrutinized and judged by all of you judges. We're going to take a short intermission. We'll do like 10-15, and we'll come back for a presentation from our guest speaker, Hale. And I'm sure these guys will be around for a little bit here, so if you want to come up and chat, please do. I'm volunteering. Thanks, guys. He is a CAA level 3, and he's an avalanche forecaster of the Peaking Horse Mountain Resort. And he's an avalanche dog handler and a lot of other things.
Oh, I broke it. Okay. Thank you, Lisa. Thanks for sticking around for part 2. I'm gonna spend a little bit of time tonight, I think, hopefully just having a conversation. So if you've got any questions, fire your hand up and I'll do my best to answer them. I'm going to start off with a little bit of what you should do before you go out there, and then move into some of the things you should have, and then what to do when the plan doesn't go as the plan. At Keeping Horse and wanted to publish and often it's this. It's a group that got together and did not have the same objectives for the day. And me and my 16-year-old son are currently in that process because he wants to go build booters in the backcountry and huck flips off of everything. And I just want to go ski, like, you know, nice mellow powder runs with my old ski patroller knees. And when we get up there together, we don't make the same decisions. I'm always going one way, he's always going the other way. I'm telling him to hurry up. I don't want to stop in the creek and build a booter, and he's going off and looking for jumps. And so as a result, we don't make great decisions together because we're constantly going in different directions. So if your group doesn't have a like objective for the day, you're at a higher risk of screwing up. And so having Joey and Mark just up here, like Joey's getting up early at 6. Mark's already 3 hours into his ski touring day, right? They're probably not going to be compatible if they don't have a real frank conversation about objectives. And then the other thing is the right objective for the day. So that's really the magic here, is looking at all of that information that's readily available and picking the right thing for that day. And sometimes it's green light, and more often than not, it's the orange light, and that one's the tricky one, right? So making sure you got the right group with the right objectives for the day. And then leave a trip plan. So this is my whiteboard this morning as I went to the office because I hadn't prepared for this. So today I'm at my office working on my presentation. I'll be home at 4. So if anybody at my house was looking for me for the day, they knew where to find me. And when I didn't show up at 4, both my kids were on the phone wondering where dinner was. I got another example. I just pulled it out on my phone this week. Got some friends that are jet boating out on the river. We're heading up there. I got my inReach. I know what time they're going to be back. I'm their emergency contact. So having some sort of trip plan that you leave with a reliable adult, maybe not a ski patroller, is really good, because when something goes wrong, we have a starting place. It's really frustrating to try to be looking for people when, 1, we don't even know they're gone, or 2, we have no idea where they went. So in today's age with cell phones, a simple text to a reliable person of what your objective was for the day, what time you plan on being back, can really help us with search and rescue. If you're using a satellite messenger as your emergency contact device, go into the profile and set it up. You go to so many wrecks where people haven't done this, or worse yet, they've loaned their device to somebody else. So then you push the SOS feature on the device, and we're going down a route to try to find some ice climber that has a plan and like a profile that you can find online. And he's actually lent the device to his obese snowmobile buddy, drinking Budweisers, and we're not even looking in the right spot, or we show up to the event completely unprepared because the context is off. So if you're going to use one of these things, update your profile, make sure that it's linked so that when you push the SOS button, your contacts also get notified. It's on option in a lot of them, whether that happens or not. So now they get notified, your emergency contact, there's something going wrong, and it goes through the SOS system. Now we can link into those emergency contacts and get a whole context, more information than we're going to get with just a pin on the map. Practice your things, right? So how many people here have taken an AST course? Now, like everybody in the room. How many people get together with their group and practice how to actually strategically shovel, actually find multiple transceivers, actually put somebody in a toboggan, improvise tarp or something and move them around? A lot less. So practice those skills because they're perishable, right? Great educational opportunities, but if you don't review them, that stuff's not going to be there when you need it. The things. Don't get into backcountry recreation if you don't like stuff. The 10 essentials. Who here's heard of the 10 essentials, right? They're essential. Basically, the preppers amongst us will have those essentially in our pockets all the time. Who's got a knife in their pocket, a match right now, pack of smokes, granola bar, right? The 10 essentials, they're essential. And then for the backcountry winter environment, adding our rescue equipment, so transceiver probe shovel, a basic first aid kit that's going to cover how to deal with critical interventions, an airway, some major bleed stuff, and then enough stuff in there to deal with blister and minor wounds. Repair kit for whatever your mode of travel is. So for skis and snowboards, it's minimal. For sleds, it's a lot more. For telemark equipment, you need all sorts of stuff, right? And then proper clothing and food for the day. Backup communication. So many people are now reliant on their cell phone as their primary mode of communication. And it's a great tool. You know, you can go up to Rogers Pass now, and most of the skiing is within cell phone range, or at least you can get to a high point and get out on a cell phone. But if you've been videoing all day, you're using your cell phone as a map, you're uploading to your Instagram, you're Snapchatting. When you go to call for help with your 20% battery, you may not get all the information out with the battery life that you've got. So if you're reliant, and you can drop your phone at any time, lose it, break it, whatever. So having a backup device is critical. And so in certain places, like adjacent to the ski hill, within the national parks, Canada's country, VHF radio may be a perfectly good backup communication device. A satellite messenger that's paired to your phone is going to work far better than a satellite messenger that you just hit the SOS button. One of the greatest in advancements in the SOS messenger is the two-way feature of it now. So we can text you once you've initiated a response, and we can have a conversation about what the nature of the event is. It really helps us respond. You know, the difference between a cardiac arrest in the backcountry and a broken leg is half a helicopter full of equipment. And so what are we packing? I would say it's like, I'm going on vacation, I just don't know if the place has a pool or not. What do I pack? So if we can two-way text you, we get a lot more info. You can only do that if your device is paired with your phone. So making sure that you've got that ability. Battery management is huge. If you're going to be using your cell phone, either as a primary or secondary communication device, you need a backup battery source. Or you need to be dedicated to like turning your phone off and having it at 100% when you leave and not doing all the other things that your phone can do. At least one in the group. A rescue tarp, you know, this is a fancy one that's got a bunch of load-bearing straps and widgets you can tie together to put somebody into a makeshift toboggan. These are great, but even just a regular tarp is such a huge tool in the backcountry. You can all get underneath it in the blowing wind, get out of the elements, have a conversation, have a cup of tea. Maybe that's the difference between making a bad decision and a good decision. You can load somebody in it, drag them a short distance out of a high hazard place to a low hazard place. Talk about it a little bit later, but being able to move somebody into a helicopter LZ versus having us have to come in and work in a high hazard, high exposed area might mean the difference between you guys getting out that night and staying that night. So a rescue tarp has so many uses. They're light. Have one in your group. A heat source, these charcoal heat blankets. There's a lot on the market now, from the hand warmers that you put in your gloves to full blanket sized ones. You crack them open, expose them to air, they heat up. They're amazing. I carry one in my ski touring and sledding pack. Not the big blanket size, but they make like a torso sized one. And they're like a real game changer, and they last for hours. That coupled with a Mylar space blanket can really make the difference between somebody suffering and being relatively comfortable, and then the ability to light a fire. So mattress are one of the 10 essentials, but multiple ways to light a fire. So having a lighter, another lighter, a third lighter, a pack of matches, and a fourth lighter is what you want to do in the backcountry. If you add a stainless steel water bottle to all of that fire starting technology and the knowledge on how to light a fire, now you can melt water, and you know, it's going to be uncomfortable, but now basically you've got your shelter taken care of, water taken care of, and heat taken care of. And now you can sustain yourself for a much longer time without all of those things.
So when it doesn't go as planned, what do? So first off, I just want to make sure that everyone knows that in Canada, British Columbia, search and rescue is completely free. Okay. So around here, we have 3 different agencies that are going to come out and help you. So that could be Kananaskis Country if you're out in the Rockies, the Parks Canada program in Banfield, Ho Jasper, Kootenay Glacier Park where Mark works, or us here in Golden and District Search and Rescue. And for all intents and purposes, we do the same things. We have the same capacities. If you go elsewhere in the province, that may or may not be the case. So there's a lot of places in British Columbia where the SAR capacity is much lower. So it's definitely something you should understand. You don't get the same service across the entire province. So SAR is free, and I would say mostly non-judgmental. Unless you're the guy that we rescued twice in 24 hours. A little bit of judgment there, but everyone else, you know, we're volunteers, we're professionals, we've all been there, we've seen it, we've all had that same thing happen to us. In early season, we rescued one of our own members who triggered an avalanche, luckily didn't go for too far of a ride, lost his gear, and had to go get him. And it was a really devastating radio call that he made to his workplace for us to come get him, but it was the right decision. So call us, please. Call us before it gets to the point where you really need us, because it's going to be easier. SAR takes time. So my little flow chart that I built here. So when you dial 911 in British Columbia, you're going to get asked police, fire, or ambulance. So what do you pick? SAR's not on the list. Police? So you're going to go to a e-com dispatcher in Vancouver who doesn't actually have a script that pops up that has any prompting for avalanche or avalanche training. What do you pick? Ambulance. Where does it go? It goes to Kamloops. And if you make the mistake of saying, I need an air ambulance, then they're actually going to transfer you to a different agency who's going to try to send you an advanced care air ambulance that can't work in the backcountry environment. And if you pick fire, then you're going to get somebody with a funny hat that shows up. So police is definitely the best option, but you need to be very specific about the nature of the event. So I'm having something, I've been involved in an avalanche, I'm injured in avalanche terrain, you know, technical mountain terrain, using those words specifically will get you the right help. We get lots of calls every year where this 911 system puts the call somewhere else, and then it takes a while to get back to us. So after you pick the right choice, say the right words, then you're going to get put through to the detachment here in Golden or your local community where you've got a RCMP constable. Great folks. We've actually got a really good system here in Golden where as soon as they get notified of a SAR call, they're going to call the SAR managers directly, even though that's not really the protocol. But they're busy. They're out fighting crime, they're doing their day job, and they often don't have context of what we do in search and rescue. So then they contact the province, the Ministry of Emergency Management and Climate Readiness. They contact the SAR team, the SAR manager picks up. It's like this 15-minute phone call sometimes. Just get off the phone, I got to do some other things. We go call Alpine, which is a contract helicopter company. They're out doing their day job. We don't have a dedicated rescue craft in town. Neither does Parks at Glacier Park. So if they're out, they're 40 minutes away from the base, flying their day job. They're 40 minutes plus fueling and putting our gear on the machine. They're 50, 60 minutes away. And then we call our membership, which are all have a day job, and get down to the hangar or get picked up at the ski hill or whatever. So the point is that it takes time. And often, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, by the time this happens, and we get an aircraft, it's done. If you push an SOS on your satellite device, then the first call goes to Texas. So this takes even longer for them to figure out where to route it. Okay? So just knowing that, and that's where like having that profile on your device and having a trip plan can often make the difference between us getting to you before dark or not. So when you push your SOS, it also goes to your reliable contact. And your reliable contact knows where you are and what you're doing for the day, and they call the RCMP directly, or often in a small community, call one of the site managers directly. We can get this ball rolling faster, and that might be the difference between you getting out of there and you spending the night. So having all those things sorted out and understanding that this whole process takes time. Then we got to get there. So, yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. So the answer is, it depends where you are. So part of owning a radio is making sure that you've got the right frequencies in there for the area that you're in, and then knowing what that agency is. So if you are in Canada, it's actually silly, but if you own a program, if you own a radio, it's actually illegal for you to have any frequency in there that you do not have a letter of permission for. But in an emergency, it's legal to transmit on any frequency. So if you had Kicking Horse Mountain Resorts frequency in your radio, and you were recreated in the Kicking Horse Backcountry, you popped on to our channel, it's always nice to wait a minute, make sure nothing else is happening, and then called Kicking Horse Dispatch on the radio. When somebody that's not working at the ski hill, or often it's somebody who used to work at the ski hill, gets on the radio and goes, dispatch from so-and-so, everybody goes, give us the information and we will call 911. We'll get the process going through our dispatch. Same as if you're in Rogers Pass, Banff, any of the CMH or mechanized heli tenures, all have radio repeaters, same thing, you can hop on there. You know, just be respectful that that's not their primary resource, and just understand that technically having that radio without the approval of the licensee is you know, you could get into trouble. Likely it will. That help?
Yeah, so realistically, we shouldn't call anyone in fact.
Yeah, exactly. And as long as you're respectful about it, nobody's going to care, right? Like if you're in Rogers Pass, Mark's working for the day, go to Glacier 16 on the radio and go, Glacier Park from so-and-so ski tour, I have an emergency. They'd way rather have that happen at 2 o'clock in the afternoon than be looking for you at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. But just be respectful of it. Then we got to get there. So our area here in Golden is quite large. It can take us, you know, often we're flying an hour, 45 minutes to get to someplace. And then when we get there, if it's technical, we got to actually rig the aircraft. It's a utility machine that does a lot of regular work, and then we put our rescue stuff on it. That requires us to have a flat LZ. We got to take some stuff off the aircraft. If it's really technical, high elevation, we got to drop the ski basket and all our weight. Ideally, we like to do this shut down so that we don't have the hazard of the spinning aircraft. So this is 10 minutes, 20 minutes. Or it's dark, and then it takes us even longer because now we're driving and sledding and all of the risk associated with operating in the dark. And sometimes you don't come until the next day. So this is a photo of the risk assessment tool that we use in British Columbia. It looks a lot like the evaluator. It's a similar concept. We go through these questions on the card, score it, and then it puts us on the heat map. And if it's high risk, we're not going. We're going to do something to mitigate that risk, and often that is wait till it's daylight. We don't have the ability to fly helicopters in the dark. We generally don't go bumbling around in avalanche terrain in the dark. You know, there's some exceptions. If we've got a really reliable report, a known injury in a known location, with previous experience in that area, we might go. But if you just push your satellite beacon at 5 o'clock in the afternoon in December with an SOS and a ping and no additional info, we're not going till first light. Because it's just too many uncertainties, right? And it's not appropriate for us. Our risk tolerance is very low when it comes to exposing search and rescue professionals or volunteers to any undue hazard, especially when we don't have the full picture. So it might be the next day before we get there. You know, so we do a little at night, but not always. help us help you. So the more prepared you are, the more tools in your toolbox, the more training you've done. Here's a photo of a team doing some strategic shoveling. So if you're buried in an avalanche and you can find somebody with a transceiver, probe them, extricate them, provide them with some initial first aid, and maybe move them from a high hazard area or a steep area to a flat LZ, and all we have to do is come in there and interface with you, that's going to be a lot better situation for everybody than if you can't find that person with the transceiver, or they don't have a transceiver, and now we need to use Reco or an avalanche dog, or we have to go in there and do the searching and the extricating ourselves. So the more prepared you are, the better your experience with us is going to be. Moving somebody, I said the rescue tarp or just a regular tarp is such a key piece of equipment in the backcountry. Being able to move somebody from a high hazard spot, flying in and seeing this really makes our day, where the person's been moved to a nice ridge feature, someplace where we can land, ideally shut down the helicopter, just reduces the risk substantially. That's all I got, but I have time for questions. No questions.
You covered all of the information.
Did all the things they said you told me to do the things, and I did the things. Okay, well, thank you. I actually have a question. How many people in the room have been to one of these events before? Okay, and how many people is their first time? That's equally cool. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Oh, that was a question. Gosh, I should have quit while I was ahead.
So, if you're skiing around the pass, it's like that. On the permit slip, there's the Jasper distribution. Is the best course of action to use like an immigration text those people?
That I can't answer. Mark, I would do both. I don't know. I know that the RCMP, the 911 system in BC does not have any capability to receive a text. I don't know about Jasper Dispatch. I would push your SOS button first and then try that text. I still don't know the answer to the question, but I would do both. Similarly, if you have a reliable contact, or you're like, oh shit, I've got to make a trip plan today, but you know somebody's in town, pushing your SOS button and then texting somebody who you know is in town and explaining to them what's going on, and having them either call 911 or if you have a direct contact to some person in town to do that, then you're hedging your bets, and that sometimes can speed the show up a bit. And I can't speak to the Jasper Dispatch yet. No, the satellite messengers are, well, Rogers Passing probably can phone that number in a lot of cases. Yeah. Yeah. But if you're on a satellite messenger, then obviously you can't. So another hand back there. But was your rescue in Jasper? No. Was it Glacier? But yeah, it was within the park though. Yeah. Oh, that seems odd to me. That's not been my experience with it. Any other question? Okay, Lisa's got things.
First off, thanks, Kyle. Can we give it up for Kyle?